So how did you come by us?
Well, okay, just a little background of me. In Louisiana, I started a citywide composting program, and for family reasons, I guess I moved to Delaware. My mother lives here, and so my husband and I split up basically. So I'm here, and I joined Wawa, and they have been looking to divert food waste, and that's a passion. And organic farming, of course. I had a little demonstration farm, which
great.
taught mostly the elementary schools. They had come out for field trips and food tastings of the rainbow and things like that. So
neat.
Looking to help Wawa set up a program. They failed because there's not really a good pickup system.
So they had it and it failed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. And
they're still looking for ways to divert. So essentially, the Wawa Foundation has grants available to help the community.
Oh, okay.
And this is what I am proposing that gets funded.
Okay. And so how you access the Wawa Foundation is you work at Wawa and you have an idea to improve some aspect of the company. For farsighted people, we have one of my anonymous donors who has donated a good amount of money to the college is connected with the Wawa founding family. I know there's a lot of them. There's maybe 20 of them or something like that. I don't know, but
it's amazing company. Like being from Missouri, I had no idea what Wawa was coming into it. So
it sounds like somebody's having a hard time saying something. But yeah, I was in Florida. I used to work at the University of Florida, and apparently Wawa went down to Florida.
They
put
are
a couple down there, and there were people that drove that were from this area originally that moved to Florida, and they drove like an hour just to go to the Wawa that opened
it's
up
crazy.
outside
I'm like,
Orlando
what?
or whatever. Well, it's all, I guess it's all what you grow up with too.
Yeah.
But I hear it's a great company too, and I went up and toured the dairy operation and the what would it be? I guess the beverage packaging and distribution system right there in Wawa or Media, PA, I guess. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
You got the robots that grab the, if your store needs 2 cases of this and 4 cases of that, you program it and it puts it on a cart. No human hands ever touch it. I know, it's weird. It's like the Amazon.com thing where it's a robot that gets all the items and puts them in a box or something. But no, I have a lot of respect for that, and we do have like say, someone who is associated with the family that has been very, very good to us.
Wonderful.
So,
that is very good to hear.
Yeah. So this would be good. So we have, and hopefully Scott will be here in just a second. Scott is our farm manager. Everything you see from here, as far as you can see, I don't know if you can see out. There's a blue building way off in the distance. You see kind of like there's some cars parked at the end of the street. And you look way beyond that. Okay, that's our farm. We have 350 acres, almost all of which are in the city limits, which makes running a farm really, as you can
difficult,
imagine, challenging because we irrigate with potable water.
You gotta.
Well, anyway, so we have, and we're surrounded by the city of Newark, so way out there. That's where our composting is, and then there are neighborhoods, but they're all at least, I would say, 500 yards away. And so, as you know, being around this area for a while, like the mushroom manure, that can, cause a lot of smell, that sort of thing. And the place over in Wilmington, the people that complained about the Hey, Scott.
How are you?
Meet Vanessa.
How you doing? Nice to meet you.
Scott Hopkins, again, Tony, he directs everything you can see out that window. And just so Vanessa is new to the area, but has family here, and has joined Wawa. Wawa has a foundation that produces grants, and the grants allow them to do new and innovative things. And like I explained to you, one of those might be to compost. And she has experience doing this in a former life in Missouri and Louisiana. So anyway, can you explain to her what we compost, where we do it, how we do it, those sorts of things?
Right now we compost all of our waste from our livestock unit across the road. So basically beef, cattle, sheep, and swine when we have them in, and the horses. And then we will take some of our waste products from this side of the road or where the dairy unit is. So spent silage, wasted silage, spoiled silage, things like that,
Okay.
when we have the room. And it's all done on a concrete pad that was underneath an old bank barn,
Mhm.
and part of the exterior outside runs that the sheep had prior to us building a new sheep barn. Fairly small, you're looking at like 60 by 80 total, so that's why we really are concentrating just across the road, in that almost all of those wastes can be composted.
Okay.
When we're allowed to spread raw manure, we can spread some of that from that unit, but other than that, like now, we're not allowed to spread, so we'll go ahead and compost those products there. Kind of started into it with maybe even a thought process similar to this. And we were kind of gung-ho about doing something and looking at funding other external, and within non-college external, I mean university funding situations, to possibly pull all of our waste, all of the green waste from up campus, and then maybe looking at portions of Newark or something like the leaves and those kind of things.
Okay.
And that just really
Yeah,
didn't.
there's about 6,000 beds on campus, and then several dining halls where those kids eat. So that's what we're talking about. It's
Okay.
the food waste that would come from the dining.
Oh.
Right? Are there
Yes.
other places too?
No,
Some of
mainly
the food
just
courts?
the dining hall.
Okay.
Because you obviously need more organic fertilizer. Is this or
No,
just normal?
probably the opposite.
Okay.
The total
Yeah.
opposite, which is why are we putting those wastes into landfills and other things?
Okay.
When hopefully they could be a beneficial product.
Right,
So that's the way
okay.
we were kind of looking at it, so.
Yeah.
uh,
And it depends. Some of our land has really high levels of phosphorus on it. We would not want to be applying much of anything at all. But there are some areas, like we just did a 2-acre organic plot. I teach a course in organic farming, and we would need a
Right.
good amount of compost
Mhm.
to go on that every year. So
Okay.
it depends on,
What
it's a
the
very chopped up,
Mhm.
specific use farm. You know,
Okay.
one side or the other is very, very different.
Mhm.
So.
Sure.
Yeah, the full gambit from normal production agricultural practices to feed cows
Mhm.
and sheep and horses, all the way down to research plots that are adding who knows what amendments, or looking at different
Oh.
kind of even hybridization or genetic material within the plant. So it is very wide ranging. And while the compost would have lent whatever components to the nutrient value of the soil, it's typically, if it's composted correctly, doesn't really lend a lot. I mean, if it's done right. So I look more at the outside things rather than just the nutritive value, as far as soil stability and some of the things it lends.
Yeah, I think the organic matter in my
Yes.
case.
Right,
We just
yeah.
need to get the organic matter up in there.
Mhm.
Yep, soil, water holding capacities, things like that. Some of the other products that are in there doing the composting benefit the plant. So anyway, so with that said, we had looked at possibly doing something, and one of the things that came up very quickly was the structure or whatever in place to do this was going to have to be substantial.
Sure. yeah.
Majorly
Mhm.
as substantial just for us, let alone
Mhm.
taking other things. And a lot of that was, I think, with maybe what had happened at Peninsula, we don't want that happening.
Fill me in
Whether-
on
Um,
that.
That's over in Newark, right?
That was in
By the
Wilmington.
river?
Wilmington,
Or-
yes.
yeah,
Yep,
we're talking
yep.
about
That's, up by the port of Wilmington. So I think they were taking, and don't quote me on any of this because I never worked for Peninsula or
Right.
had, but they were taking food waste from various places, and I think Wawa was one of them. I'm not 100%, but I
Okay.
think so. Plus other major food chains, as stuff goes bad, they can take it. So, and what they did was they did a static pile composting,
Mhm.
and I think some things. Obviously, compost doesn't always do what we want it to do all the
Mhm.
time, and they were close to some businesses and also some neighborhoods, not too far away that the nose couldn't smell certain things.
Okay. Mhm.
Plus, the one thing that shocked me from the get-go was their facility, basically at the very edge of it, if you took 15 steps, you were in the river. And
Oh,
it just,
and that's a big.
I could not believe that they did it that close, but I think there were some possible issues with that too.
Hmm.
They
So I
have
think
huge piles too.
Yeah, and I
Right.
think that after time, they had a lot of issues, a lot of complaints, a lot of things, and I think they just kind of folded up shop.
Right.
Done.
So it'd
With-
be really important to establish best practices and
Right.
yeah, good.
Right. So with that, myself and our facilities manager, plus working with soil conservation in Newcastle County, we kind of drew up a small plan of what size we would need to have and then how we would want this configured and things like that. And I even worked into it of having some underground tanks, you know, whether they were poly tanks that were put in for the affluent as it flowed out, especially in the beginnings of the pile, which is usually the most rich in nutrients that are coming off, so that it was contained more than just a quote runoff area that tall grass was growing and things like that. It really wasn't even able to permeate through the soil, and we could use that for whatever we would need, compost tea type situations, whatever, but also pump it back out and use it to actually aquify the compost piles in the summertime when we need moisture, rather than run city water at a cost
Right,
that
with
also has
chemicals
chlorine.
and- yes.
Right. So,
Okay.
and that cost just really went through the roof.
Wow.
Last that I can remember, I think we were looking at $600,000 to $700,000 to kind of do things from fit to finish, and that did include some storage areas and things, you know,
Okay.
buildings, if you will, covers, things that would reduce the amount of rainfall on static piles that were obviously just sitting to maturity. So you might have to have them sit for 3 to 6 months just to
Right.
mature and become more stable. So that's kind of where we were. So,
Well, fantastic. That sounds
but we didn't do it.
okay.
Yeah.
But
Well,
you're
yeah, that's always
interested in
the-
it, and you know, I'm
Yeah.
interested in helping that happen.
Right.
So,
Yeah, and you know, I'd like to. We have this one course in organic farming, and I think we're probably going to end up having more as time goes on. I think the Plant and Soil Science Department
see.
kind of sees their student interest in all of that
Mhm.
sort of thing. And I don't know that we could ever, you know, take the volume of waste for all the Wawa stores in the tri-state region or something like that. But I wonder, could we actually establish sort of a pilot and test a model for how this could be done? And then, you know what, maybe somebody in the private sector will get smart enough to figure out, well, if I go into this business, maybe I can make some money at it.
or
Maybe
the
I can-
nonprofit sector,
Or nonprofit,
to keep
you
the
know.
mission pure. You know.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
And it's funny because I don't know if you saw across the street when you came here, we talk about pouring concrete pads. Well, there was a Chrysler plant over there, and then about 5 years ago or so, the Chrysler left town and left about 200 acres of concrete where they produce cars and, you know, all that. And now the university owns it. And it's just ideal for doing the kinds of things that
Wow,
you're
it
talking
sure
about. It would
would.
be, you know, right over there. It's far enough away from everyone that any smell would probably be minor, you know, by the time it got to us. But they do have big plans. There's going to be a new Amtrak station that will be tied into that area, and there's going to be a new, larger building. There's only 2 buildings over there now that will be more high-tech industry oriented. So I don't know that we will ever be able to do that. But for Scott and I, it conflicts us to think about pouring concrete on this side of the road when we have 200 acres of concrete
Right.
on that
Right.
side of the road that they're going to have to jackhammer out of there
It's going to cost
to
a lot
put the
to-
new stuff in, and so
yes.
we're just going, oh, you know, how do we deal with that? I always thought maybe on a temporary basis, if we could just take a piece over there and just for a few years until things start to get built up over
Right.
there, maybe we could do that. But anyway, that's the
Yeah.
predicament that we're in, is that we would need capital to invest on this side for sure to be able to do it right.
Okay.
And the last thing I want is for students to walk out and see something being done wrong. And
Correct,
This is
right.
the learning environment
Exactly.
for them.
And they're going to go off
You
and
know.
do their own projects, hopefully. Or,
Yeah, so we don't want the effluent, you know, running onto the grass when that's not the way you really should do
Right.
it, you know, kind
Well,
of a thing.
plus, all those nutrients are lost when it's running out.
Yeah. So I don't know. Can you tell us more about the foundation, how it works, what they're willing to fund, like how much money they'd be willing to fund, those sorts
Well,
of things? Is that-
typically it's about $1,500, so it's not much.
Okay, so it's a small amount. Okay.
But because I see this fulfilling a business need as well, there might be
Yeah.
additional funding through, you know, corporate funding. So.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, and that would be good to maybe talk to the corporate folks, whoever's in charge of, do you have like a vice president for sustainability or
Yes,
something? I don't know.
his name is Mark Wood, and
Okay.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, do you think that's possible? Could
I think it
you
is
know,
very possible.
I don't know, you know, what direction the company is headed in. And again, I think no matter what, we don't want to the other thing too is that we could scale it up with the land that we have, but do we want to take an opportunity away from the private sector? That's another issue
Right.
too. Like we make ice cream, but we don't ramp up the ice cream production enough that it puts the other creameries out of business.
Oh, okay.
Because we have that just as a teaching facility so that kids learn how to make ice cream and how to sell
But
it.
can kids come over and buy ice cream and?
Yeah, we
eat
actually
there?
put
I
it
was
in all the
wondering.
dining halls
Oh,
on campus, and you can buy it right over there at the store. And we put 20 or 25 interns through that a year, so they learn about making and selling ice
that's
cream,
great.
something
Mhm.
like that. And that would be the same kind of thing if we, as we get into produce.
Mhm.
Scott and his, one of his employees is growing produce, and we're selling to restaurants. But again, we don't want to put people out of
Sure.
business that might make a viable
Mhm.
business doing that.
That's a
We
very
just
good
want to
point.
kind of give students experiential
Mhm.
learning opportunities, so that when they graduate, they may go out and do something like
Mhm.
that. That's all. So we have to be
Yes.
careful
Sure.
because we're subsidized.
Mhm.
It's a $1 billion budget at UD, and $100 million of it comes from the state. So it's not fair for us to compete with the private sector
Sure.
because we're partially subsidized by that. But it would take a significant amount of money to get sort of a pilot facility up and running. And so I guess that would be the conversation
Okay, sure.
with a VP for sustainability is, I think it would be good for Wawa to, be investing with the students, and so.
Absolutely, I see a lot of benefit to that.
Yeah, right. And kids, most of our kids come from what? Connecticut down to DC is kind of where our
Mhm, so
student
they're-
population comes from. They all are familiar with Wawas.
Mhm.
And, to see them investing in,
Mhm.
a project that they're learning from is definitely a good thing. But it would have to be at the scale of what, you were talking about.
To be able to.
Yeah, smaller amounts that might come from some
Mhm.
of the stores, not all of the stores, that we would be able to utilize to really bulk up the organic matter, is what you're saying, right? Not so much a nutrient thing, but
Right.
more of an OM type of a deal on some of our plots there. And then maybe the next step is that we find that private or
Yes.
.org
Mhm.
partner that wants to scale that
Mhm.
all the way up, and maybe be a satellite company for Wawa or something. I
Yeah,
don't know.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So.
I mean, right now, we're kind of like at the footprint that we have and what we're doing, especially this time of year, because in fact, Larry's back, and we were
Yeah.
talking, and we're actually merging two piles, and this time of year, we can't spread anything of
Yeah.
nutritive value on the ground in the nutrient management plan. So it's roughly December 7th to the midpoint to the end of February. That thing that's a moving target on the front side. Typically, it goes later than that in February because the ground's still frozen. So right now, we're at capacity, because if we form another windrow now, we're probably going
Yeah.
to have to form another one in mid to late February, and we're like shot. I mean, we don't have any place to put anything really
Yeah.
that we have. So
Yeah.
one
So
thing
that's
is,
the-
depending upon how much,
Yeah.
we probably would not be able to do this, just so everyone's on board and understands. I don't think we could do this even where we're and what we're doing right now,
Mhm.
because it's so small. So we would have to be looking at a site.
Close by,
We'd have
and
to
it's
expand.
convenient to where the food waste is gonna happen too.
Well, that's the other thing.
Like where would
I think
drop-offs be and?
Yeah, in the end, you want something as centrally located as possible, because
Mhm.
the transportation cost is what's going
Right.
to kill you,
Yes, and then that's the part that's the least green.
Right, because you're burning fossil fuel to get it a long way, so I guess there's a lot of components there. But I don't want to sound like I'm throwing cold water on
No.
that, and anytime I can infuse a learning experience into something like this, I think that's an opportunity for our college.
Absolutely, yeah.
But maybe the next step is we do talk with your vice president, and
Mhm.
we take a look at, and we can actually go over there today if you want to, and take a look at what we're doing.
I would love to.
But
Mhm.
I just have to be honest with you at the outset that it would take an investment to
Sure.
do that.
And you mentioned 6,000, would
6 what?
6,000, for a budget for?
No,
Denny's?
we were talking, actually, it
No,
would be a
what was-
lot more than that.
Okay, all right.
For concrete and
Yeah.
it'd
Yeah,
be hundreds of
annual.
thousands of
Yes.
dollars to
Yeah.
build something to scale, and that may be way
Okay.
beyond what
Right,
Wawa wants to do, I
Yeah.
don't know. But I guess just to have that conversation with, is this something you really,
Yeah.
are looking
Mhm.
to do long-term? Even, that amount of money would only build sort of a pilot, small-scale
Right.
learning, facility,
Mhm.
not the full scale that will do the work that you want it to do. And then the other thing too, since you're spread out from DC to New York, I guess, at least, right?
Mhm.
you might want to have 10 of these things.
Right, that's what I had kind of
Yeah.
envisioned, having multiple programs.
Right.
To help reduce the local food
Yeah.
waste, you know, but.
But how much, so your store,
Mhm.
because you have one in Newcastle, right?
Yep.
How much waste is it producing a day?
Well,
and is
most
it
of-
seasonal at all?
I guess a little bit would be seasonal. Most bulky, the biggest thing would be coffee grounds. So there's so much. I mean, and they're very heavy, and so that's a lot of tonnage over time. And I don't know the numbers, but I do want to find those out, and I'll let you know. So they have some of the express case items, but there's meat products in them, so there's going to be a little bit more labor involved in unwrapping those packages if, you know, that was done.
Yeah, so you'd have to develop a sorting system for your
Mhm.
store, right? But in theory, you could get compostable stuff
Sure.
sorted.
Absolutely, yes. And
Right.
even like a separate container just for that, so.
All right, so at least a couple of those containers a day per
Mhm.
store? Something
Yes,
like that?
mhm.
So I don't know what that translates to.
Yeah,
as
I mean,
far as-
I'm just trying to like compute in my head and think about the store across the road,
Right.
and I would think that they would generate 300-400 pounds a day roughly with everything.
Yeah.
And I'm not real crazy
Mhm.
about the meat component, you know what I
Right.
mean, the leftover, because when you talk to people, typically it's like if you're not doing an in-vessel system or something, you know, I think that's why Peninsula went with the static piles and the tarp cover,
Mhm.
because hopefully it did, you know, kind of keep the vermin out and things like that. You start putting
Yeah.
meat and the fatty products in
Right,
it, and it's
abs-
really hard on composting. It doesn't
Yeah.
lend
Well,
itself.
Yeah, you don't have the product that you need at the end that actually is useful to the,
Right,
you know.
right.
Plus
And I
you're
would
getting
actually
rodents
think,
and things.
yes,
Mhm.
and in the end, I mean, I would always want to be, whatever we did with our product, it would be up front, and I think that some people might push away from that if there were meats
Mhm.
and fat products that were in there, so I don't know. Coffee grinds, that's one thing, and yeah, I can
Mhm.
only imagine what the tonnage in that is for X number of stores.
Right,
Yeah.
yes.
And I think you almost have to look at it too. Any
Sure.
any one product too much or feedstock into a
Mhm.
composting is a bad thing. So you know,
Very
we'd-
acidic.
Yes, we'd have to look
environment
at
too.
yeah those kind of things to whether or not. I mean, I definitely don't want to. I don't want to do something that's going to inhibit us with the waste that we have, because when I set out, and at least at what we're doing now, we're cutting into the problem or situation that we had here by being able to make a compost of some kind. So make sure that we still were able to do all of our waste here within the farm.
Sure.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, and then, you know, I think I discussed with you by phone. Did we talk by phone? Right?
Mhm, yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
So there's a guy that you ought to meet. His name is Bill.
Actually, I had a friend from Wawa. She's a
Okay.
friend and coworker. She actually knows somebody there, and she's going to get me a farm tour. Yes.
Okay.
Her
All right.
riding partner's boyfriend used to actually
Yeah.
live there and work the farm. So.
Yeah, it's maybe 15 miles west of here in Maryland. But anyway, he helped us get our creamery started. This guy, he's really very progressive, and he built sort of a homemade methane biodigester. He milks 400 head of cows. We have 100. Okay? And then there's something you can do with the cow waste is anaerobic digestion.
Mhm.
Okay, which is very sophisticated and very expensive. But what he has found is taking cranberry waste and other waste from New Jersey and mixing that with the cow manure makes the sort of right carbon-nitrogen ratio that blows off a fair amount of methane that he runs a generator with, and then he has the effluent that he can then put back on his
Wow,
fields and things like
that's-
that.
yeah.
And so it's a really neat exercise in like minimum input, low tech sustainability on a farm. He's a fascinating guy. But I'm pointing this out because you're in a hay and dairy region when you look at
Mhm.
Pennsylvania and New York and West Virginia, Virginia, and all of that. Not so much in Delaware, but there's a lot of dairy operations that may be looking for food waste
Sure.
to mix with the manure effluent to get the right mix to make methane
Mhm.
biodigestion go well. And that, in the long run, that prevents you from having to build this infrastructure
Sure.
and all that. And then it might make more sense to get really big trucks that would visit all of the stores and then end up dumping it at that one site. And then it goes into that process,
Yeah.
and there you go. And then guys like Kilby are looking for that stuff.
Right, and that's where I want to make more of those connections in the food systems to help.
Yeah. So I'm not throwing cold water on this. We still ought to have another conversation, but as Wawa thinks about long-term planning, and you think about how many dairy farms there are within 100 miles of this area, there's probably people that would be willing to do that. Again, maybe there's concerns with meat and other things being in it, and you'd have to talk through those details, but that in the Northeast in particular has been kind of a trend. There's a lot of farms in Vermont now that sell electricity back to the grid that they generate from the methane on dairy farms. And so it's a really neat thing. And wouldn't that be great for Wawa to be involved in that?
Yes, absolutely.
That's a cool idea. So.
Our waste go to make the milk and ice cream.
Yeah, and honestly, if somebody
Because of energy.
came to the farm here and said, hey, I'd like to write you and Scott a check for $5 million, what would you do with that? Honestly, if we put a methane biodigester in there, it would solve a lot of his problems. I know that. And we'd be able to make methane. We could pull the environmental engineering students down so they could look at how you create electricity from organics. It involves the whole campus at that point. And then we would be looking to the food waste in the dining halls to be a feedstock if we could get into that.
That's
so that
exciting.
That is a whole nother, you can go out and you can view these technologies in place today.
Yeah, I watched a video on one for a university. It was like an hour long, and it's very, very sophisticated. We need a couple of people just to run it.
Yeah, we figured we'd have to have a full-time person on his staff if we did that, just to do that, just to manage that.
Right.
But
it's exciting, and it can produce a lot of food waste. So
light up your barn too.
Yeah, and produce.
That's
yes.
the cool thing. Yeah, right. Yeah. So anyway, I just throw that out in case you hadn't been. It sounds like you're making connections now.
Yeah.
You would have stumbled on that anyway. But if this were not to be what would work out, I think there is demand for that.
Well, great. I appreciate your time and your thoughts and
Well, I'll tell you what, if the month of January and February are generally pretty slow for us around here, if there's a way that we can, there's my card.
Great, thank you.
You get a hold of Scott. If there's a way that we can meet with others in the company, but again, it's a substantial investment. And it seems like a simple thing to do, but to be environmentally responsible with it, you have to pour concrete and do all the things that Scott was talking about.
A little irresponsible environmentally to do it, but the biggest payoff is in the end, once it's established.
Yeah, once you have it there, it's there for like that concrete. When was that poured? In the 1940s?
No. Well, a little bit before that, when they first made the plant, because they were making cars out of that, and then they switched to tanks.
Tanks
for
during World War II. That's how old that site is.
Well, you probably don't want the concrete in there anyway. Chemicals and
could be.
I don't know.
We don't know what's in there, but anyway.
I'm just looking for an impervious surface and then have a place to contain something in the end. And that's what we we really thought that it would be no problem, i.e. we're not going to always be there kind of a thing. Like if they came to us and said, look, by X you have to be out of here, it's okay. Well,
but use it for 5 years.
We'll take all the waste from the university, maybe even the city,
and then you'd have a program that could actually, create funding around that and maybe support itself through the sale of the compost.
Yeah, or if nothing else, you use it to spread back on the landscape and other places around the north part of campus. Mulch and all that.
Absolutely.
So, okay. All right, well, anyway, I hope this was useful to you.
Right.
And
do you think I can still get that farm tour? Or?
Yeah, I can show you.
I
I can take her and show her where we compost now, and like I say, what we are doing. And once again, I don't pull any punches. Is so rudimentary and at the very beginning level. So I think you'll probably be shocked. Like I said, 60 by 80 is not very big.
Yeah.
We're proud of it, but it's very, very small.
Okay.
So you can see kind of what we were stuck with.
Well, just getting an idea of the layout and things maybe help later with.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, absolutely. Thank you again very much for your time and
Vanessa,
all your
nice
information.
to meet you.
Me too.
All right. I wish you success with
Thank you.
Wawa. I'll be stopping there tonight and gassing up the car because I get stuck in snow.
Dollar coffee right now.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
I'll do it that way. Got one of those, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so you gotta take her over there. All right, great. That'd be great.
Yes.
Yeah.
A few more hours to go.
Okay.
Before the blizzard hits.